Hello, 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 and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. We're here for the nursing news and business, and all things healthcare, all things nursing here. So let's go ahead and get into it. Today is November the 15th in 2023, and I want to say welcome to those of you that are joining us on Facebook, on our Baxter Professional Services page, those that are on our Nurse Shark Academy page, and perhaps you're joining us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. Our first inspirational quote from today says, sometimes when things are falling apart, they may actually be falling into place. Sometimes when things are falling apart, they may actually be falling into place. And here's another quote that I thought was interesting. And it says, to find yourself, think for yourself. To find yourself, think for yourself. And that is Socrates. And this is another quote that I really love. This is from Dr. Seuss, and it says, you have to be odd to be number one. You have to be odd to be number one. So those are our inspirational quotes today from the Inspirational Daily Calendar by Lauren Dratch. All right, let's go ahead and get into the news because there is a lot of news to cover for today. I get excited about coming in and bringing you the news every week. And so this is coming from Stat Investigations, and it says United Healthcare use algorithms to deny care, staff say. The nation's largest health insurance company pressured its medical staff to cut off payments for seriously ill patients in lockstep with the computer's algorithms calculations, denying rehabilitation care for older and disabled Americans as profits soared, a Stat investigation has found. United Healthcare Group has repeatedly said its algorithm, which predicts how long patients will need to stay in rehab, is merely a guidepost for their recoveries. But inside the company, managers delivered a much different message, that the algorithm was to be followed precisely so payment could be cut off by the date it predicted. Internal documents show a United Healthcare subsidiary called NaviHealth set a target for 2023 to keep rehab stays of patients in Medicare Advantage plans within 1% of the days projected by the algorithm. Former employees said missing the target for patients under their watch meant exposing themselves to discipline, including possible termination, regardless of whether the additional days were justified under Medicare coverage rules. So there's more to this article. You can certainly get that from Stat News. I just thought I'd bring that up because as we're talking about how healthcare is funded and all the things that are going on in healthcare, you got to kind of wonder. And with technology using a lot more with AI and things like that, it's going to become an even bigger problem. And I have to say, not everybody responds to that cookie cutter approach. And so as a clinician, it's frustrating to me to have to fight for my patients to get what they need. So I can understand how they feel about this. All right, here's another article. And we've talked about this before. And those of you who know, I am a nurse practitioner. I'm a master's prepared nurse practitioner. I want to clarify that as well. And it says this article came out and it says the doctor of nursing practice will see you now. It says nurse practitioner Anthony Carano speaks with a patient at the Mountain Park Health System in Phoenix in March. An explosion in the number of nurse practitioners with doctorates has spurred debate and legislation over who can use the doctor title. Again, this is something that we faced here in Indiana, and it's going around in other states. And in particular, if you remember, we previously reported on the nurse that was sued in California for having the nerve to call herself doctor. When Vernon Lanford sees patients, he typically wears a white lab coat with his title, doctor, and his credentials as a nurse practitioner stitched on the front. My credentials are on my jackets I have, the shirts I wear. If I have a name tag, it's on that, said Langford, who works as a primary care provider in Seminole County, Florida. He holds a doctorate of nursing practice, the highest degree available in his field. Like a PhD, it confers on him the doctor title, but he says he explains to patients what that means and how his role in education differ from that of physician. He says, when I meet anyone, I want to make sure I'm educating them about who I am. And that's certainly what I do. A patient come in, particularly my brand new patients, don't know who I am. I often identify myself and give them my name. My name is Tina Baxter, and I'm the nurse practitioner. And I say that from the very beginning. And they'll see that sitting there on my desks saying, but with my name and my credentials. So there's no confusion as to who I'm saying that I am, because it's right there on there. So a Florida bill lawmakers considered this year would have barred Lanford and others with similar credentials from using the doctor title in clinical settings. The bill was amended to exclude nurse practitioners before it reached the desk of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who vetoed it without explanation. But Langford, who's the president of the Florida Association of Nurse Practitioners, expects the legislation to reemerge. Under pressure from physician groups, an increasing number of states are weighing similar restrictions. The debate is a symptom of a broader battle in healthcare amid a shortage of doctors and an explosion. Again, they use that word again, explosion, really? In the number of nurse practitioners with doctorates, many nursing groups are pushing to expand what nurses can do without a physician's supervision. And so again, we're not asking, in most cases, of not expanding what we can do. And see, these terms are misleading. What we're asking for, and I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here, but what we're asking for is for nurses to be able to practice to the full scope of what they're trained to do, not expand the practice. And so there's the difference. And so a lot of times when these articles are written, they're written with automatic bias in them. But I'll go on. So it says physicians, meanwhile, are pushing to keep nurse practitioners and physician assistants under their oversight, arguing that giving more autonomy to providers with less rigorous training could put patients at risk. Now, can I say, research has shown that that is not true. And in fact, during the pandemic, those restrictions were lifted. What were the restrictions? Basically, to have a piece of paper that says a physician will review 5% of your charts every week. That's what it says in the state of Indiana. So this is after the fact, after the care has been given, not during while the care has been given, not asking for permission to do the care. This is after the fact. And all it really does is provide a barrier for nurse practitioners to be able to practice freely in the state. So that's really what it does. We collaborate with our physician colleagues all the time, and they collaborate with us just as much. So it's not to say that this collaboration is something that actually provides a safety measure for patient care, because that's not necessarily true. And a lot of times, by the time some of the doctors get to the patients that they've never seen, a lot of times never touched, never spoken to, it's after the fact. So anyway, Langford goes on to say it has nothing to do with ego or wanting to be something I'm not. If I worked hard and earned a doctorate, I can use the title of doctor. And so we happen to agree. Other non-physician providers who have doctoral degrees, such as optometrists and pharmacists, often use the doctor title, although some states have considered bills backed by physician groups that would limit those providers as well. And so because I work in mental health, we have clinical psychologists who go by the title of doctor. So the AMA and other physician groups are arguing allowing nurse practitioners with doctoral degrees to use doctor prefix in a clinical setting will confuse patients. I think patients are a little bit more savvy than they give credit for, especially if the nurse practitioner is identifying themselves as a nurse practitioner, as we do. So according to Dr. Rebecca Bernard, a family physician in Florida, for me, it's worrisome when a nurse practitioner or physician assistant is being perceived as a physician. We don't have the same training or education. Patients should know who's taking care of them so they can make an informed decision about their health. And so again, that's a little disingenuous, right? Because what they're saying is that they want the patient to make an informed decision about their health. And it's not really about their health. It's about who's delivering the care, because the care provided could potentially be the same. If you're coming in for the flu and you want something to help combat the flu, like a Tamiflu or something like that, a nurse practitioner can certainly do that. Now, if you were coming in for surgery, well, obviously you'd want a physician to do that. So nurse practitioners aren't out there doing those types of things. And so I think that a little bit of this is just a little bit, again, disingenuous. Okay, so let's move on. Let's go on. So it says the doctor title has long been associated with physicians who hold an MD. And in fact, the doctor was reserved for physicians, which is why only those individuals are given the title in this story. Advanced practice registered nurses, often called nurse practitioners or APRNs, can be primary care providers. They can diagnose and treat some conditions and prescribe medications, and about more than half of states allow them to practice without physician supervision. So again, more states are recognizing that these artificial barriers really aren't impacting patient care. It's more like a money-making venue for physicians. But anyway, we'll go on. But they have had a less extensive medical education than physicians, and they're limited in what they can do for patients. Okay, which is quite understood. Now, physicians and nursing organizations are pouring millions of dollars into state level lobbying and title transparency campaigns as more states take up this issue. So in California, and we've talked about this before, a nurse practitioner named Sarah Ernie agreed last year to pay nearly $20,000 to settle a civil case brought by the district attorney of San Luis Obispo County. She holds a doctorate degree in nursing and had called herself Dr. Sarah on her website and social media. Officials said she violated California state code by failing to adequately explain to the public that she was not a medical doctor. So my question is, are you going to go after every psychologist, every pharmacist, every other clinical person, veterinarians who take the term doctor? You see, this becomes then a slippery slope. So are you going to sue veterinarians for calling themselves doctors when they are not a medical doctor? And, that extends to doctors who have chiropractic services. Are you then now going to include them in your ban? So it says Georgia approved a new law in May that dictates how non-physicians can identify themselves to patients. Lawmakers in North Carolina introduced a similar bill that stalled in committee. Indiana in 2022, New Jersey in 2020 have approved title transparency laws in recent years. And so there's more to this story. Feel free to read this, but I won't belabor the point and go on. But you can see where a lot of this is coming out, unfortunately, to be like a turf war. And again, I think part of it is to sort of keep nurses in their place. And one of the reasons I do believe it's a bit of sexism because nurses are, for the most part, women. All right, let's move on. Okay. Let's go to this story. This is coming from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and it says Biden-Harris administration continues unprecedented efforts to increase transparency of nursing home ownership. The Biden-Harris administration is taking additional action to empower nursing home residents and their families to make informed decisions about care and how to hold nursing homes accountable for the service they provide by requiring nursing homes to disclose additional ownership and management information to CMS and states and make this information public. It has become increasingly important to scrutinize ownership arrangements as recent studies, including research released by the Department of Health and Human Services, show that private equity ownership is associated with poor staffing conditions and resulting decreases in quality of care. Today's final rule includes definitions of private equity and real estate investment trusts, setting the stage for identifying whether a nursing home belongs to one of these types of owners. These actions continue to build on the Biden-Harris administration's unwavering commitment to improve the safety and quality of care in the nation's nursing home and President Biden's historic executive order on promoting competition in the American economy. Earlier this year, CMS and HHS also proposed a rule in September to establish national minimum staffing standards for nursing homes to enhance the quality and safety of care. So we've talked about that um, at length in the last few episodes. So if you look back at our previous episodes, we'll talk about that and the concerns that they have. Well, this is coming out. So that final rule requires nursing homes enrolled in Medicare or Medicaid, the majority of the country's nursing homes, to disclose additional information regarding their owners, operators, and management. For example, nursing homes will disclose individuals or entities that provide administrative services or clinical consulting services to the nursing homes. Nursing homes will also be required to disclose entities that exercise financial control over the facility, such as an organization the nursing homes hires to manage all of its financial matters. So there's more to this story, but please take a look. You can download the final rule at the Federal Register, and that is in this article. And so if you want that link, let me know, and I'll post that in the comments. Okay, let's move on. Little bit of good news for some. We now have another new nursing specialty, and by the way, I'm still looking for the geriatric neuropsychiatry certification for nurses, but we'll go on. So burn nursing specialty certification is now available. After years of study and program development, the Board of Certification for Emergency Nursing, the BCEN, has launched its new Certified Registered Nurse Specialty Certification, Certified Burn Registered Nurse Certification. To earn the certification, eligible RNs and APRNs must pass a national exam that covers the burn nursing continuum. According to the board, patients with burn injuries and their families need and deserve specialized care. The certified burn registered nurse validates advanced knowledge and expertise across the burn care continuum, including pre-hospital and initial management, critical and acute care, patient and family support, rehabilitation and reintegration, and injury prevention education. The exam is described as rigorous. Details of the certification and practice exams are available on the BCEN Learn site. So congratulations on that new certification. So those of you that are in the areas of treating patients with burns, this might be a good certification for you to work on. Okay, this one is a little tough to report on, and but it's important. This came from Fox News, and this says emergency room nurse lost to suicide, called U.S. healthcare system her abuser in a haunting letter. So I do want to say, for those of you that are concerned, please, there's a trigger warning for this. If you are experiencing any suicidal thoughts, you can call 988 or 1-800-273-TALK. I want to personally say that. So I'm just to let you know that we will be talking about a very sensitive subject right now. It says Tristan Kate Smith, a 28-year-old Ohio nurse, wrote a scathing letter to her abuser 5 months ahead of her August 2023 suicide. The letter has since gone viral among nurses across the country, many of whom shares Smith's disillusionment with the U.S. healthcare system. This is what she wrote. I so desperately want to continue to help people, but I cannot stay in this abusive relationship. Her father, Ron Smith, discovered the letter, titled A Letter to My Abuser, on the nurse's laptop 2 months after her death. In October, it was published as a letter to the editor in the Oakwood Register, a local paper in Ohio, in an effort to raise awareness of how some nurses feel the system they love is failing them. We've often talked about how it's difficult for those in the healthcare field to admit that they need help because of the stigma. The fact that, you may face, unfortunately, some consequences and things like that. So nurse burnout is real. In her letter, Smith says that the shortage of nurses made her feel overwhelmed. She said, each day you ask me to do more with less. And so again, if you have a problem, please seek help. She also wrote in her letter, you are a narcissist. You use and exploit us to line your pockets using the common citizens' money for overpriced health care. I remember the first time I heard about nurses getting hit. I remember that you asked them what they've done or didn't do to prevent this from happening. We've often covered workplace violence here on this show. And the sad fact is that nurses are 18% more likely to die from suicide than the general population between 2007 and 2018. Female nurses were 70% more likely to die by suicide than female physicians, and twice as likely to die by suicide compared to the general population. So, unfortunately, again, I wanted to share just some of the highlights from that story. I'm not going to read the entire letter and all that information to you. You can certainly look it up. It's like I said, it's gone viral. But if you know someone or you're struggling with suicidal thoughts and depression, please get help. You can contact the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988 or 1-800-273-TALK. That's 988 or 1-800-273-TALK. Okay. Here's another story. We're going now to long-term care news. And this says former Princeton Care Center employees, residents say they're still owed money after nursing homes abrupt closure. It's coming out of Princeton, New Jersey. It's been 2 months since a Princeton nursing home abruptly closed with less than a day's notice. Yet CBS New York investigative reporter Tim McNicholas, found families are still searching for thousands of dollars deposited into their loved one's account. Those families aren't the only ones searching for their money. Nearly 70 employees are wondering if they'll ever be paid for their final 3 weeks of work. It says Susan Caleton is trying to remember the good times, flipping through a scrapbook filled with photos of seniors whose days she helped plan as an activity director at the Princeton Care Center. She says, I adored every single one of them. It was my job to make them happy. But happiness was in short supply the day 72 seniors had to leave as the nursing home shut down with less than a day's notice due to a financial emergency. Their children say that the abrupt closure not only angered them, but traumatized their parents, some suffering from dementia and other health issues. 69 employees, some of whom helped sort through that chaos, have now filed claims with the state because they still have been paid for their final 3 weeks. Catlin said, thank God I am on unemployment. How could you not have money? Every single one of those people were paying to live there. I don't know how you could not have the money. The paychecks aren't the only problem. Many residents had hundreds and in some cases thousands of dollars in personal need allowances in their accounts for haircuts, clothing, or other needs. Some of the funds came from relatives. Much of it came directly from residents' Social Security checks. Sarat Tunkassery, whose mother was living there, says it's now frozen somewhere. They don't know where it is. Her account had about $4,700 in it. He said he's tried to call Ezra, email him and no response. Ezra is Ezra Bongner, the nursing home administrator who employees and relatives alike now say they can't get a hold of. So the news agency drove to his home to ask about the funds, but they weren't able to reach him either. So this is really sad. According to this, the state records show that the health department visited the nursing home in June, and an employee stated sometimes there are only 2 aides to care for 60 residents. Bongner told a state surveyor that there had been, quote, cash flow issues with the facility since March. It says, why didn't the state come in with some emergency finances to make sure residents could stay in a place where there was a plan that they could make sure that the health and safety of the residents were first, said New Jersey State Senator Andrew Zwicker. The health department says that the nursing home told them a new owner would be taking over, but that deal fell through the day before the emergency shutdown. The State Department would not agree to an interview, but they did issue a statement. The evacuation was initiated and handled by the facility. The facility notified the department that it was invoking its emergency plan and evacuating residents. In the case of an activated emergency closure, the department cannot force a facility to remain open, as that would be forcing residents to stay in an unsafe situation. The department sent surveyors and mission critical staff to monitor the situation and remained on site during the residents' transfers to their new temporary homes, with the last resident left the building to ensure their health and well-being. Please direct any specific questions about the evacuation to the landlord or owners. The department's investigation into Princeton Care Center's compliance with the department's long-term care facility rules is still open, and as such, the department is unable to comment while its investigation is pending. The nursing home told the state they're trying to return the funds, but the account is frozen in part because a medical supply company is suing over unpaid bills. A lawyer for that company told McNicholas they want to return the funds, but the Princeton Care Center hasn't given them specifics about what money is still owed to whom. So that's a very sad situation. And unfortunately, we will probably likely be seeing more situations like this happen. Okay, remember this story? I want to go back to the story about the attorney that's a nurse, and she was sanctioned for apparently neglecting her duties as an attorney while she was going to graduate school as a nurse. Well, let's get into this story. Okay. So it says, Gardner quit to avoid day of reckoning on nursing program, AG says. This is coming out of St. Louis. So last night, Attorney General Andrew Bailey released his 62-page report into former St. Louis County Attorney Kim Gardner, detailing the months-long quo warranto led by his office that resulted in Gardner abruptly resigning in May. Among the details in the report is new information about the extent to which Gardner was spending her time pursuing a master's degree in nursing and the importance that the revelations of her student life played in her resignation. Last night, former Judge William Corrigan, who was with the Attorney General's office at the time, says that the office first became aware of Gardner's secret life as a nursing student because of a tip submitted to the office's constituent services website. Someone wrote in to say that their spouse was a classmate of Gardner, which kicked off the investigation. Based on that tip, investigators observed on 2 occasions, April 27th and 28th, as Gardner spent extended periods of time at the Family Care Health Center's clinic in the Grove, completing practical work. It turned out that Gardner had been enrolled in the master's program since the fall of 2021, Bailey's report says. The timing of Gardner's resignation has everything to do with those revelations, the Attorney General tells the RTF. The day of reckoning was staring her in the face, Bailey says. At a scheduled May 16th hearing in the quo warranto proceeding, a judge was likely to order both SLU and the clinic to produce records related to Gardner, Bailey says. It's no coincidence that 2 hours before that hearing, Gardner emailed her resignation to the governor. She hit the eject button 2 hours before we were going to court in order to deprive the state of thousands of pages of documents that we had subpoenaed. Gardner also had a deposition scheduled for 2 days later, which her resignation allowed her to avoid. Bailey tells the RFT that Gardner is, quote, absolutely open to criminal charges. For criminal liability, it could be as simple as she was stealing from the public coffer by using official resources to do private activity like obtain an advanced degree in nursing, Bailey says. There are federal public corruption statutes on the books, so the Department of Justice has the authority certainly to pursue a case like that. Corrigan says that, like many others, the Attorney General's office also heard rumors that Gardner was not living in St. Louis City, as is required by law for the city's top elected prosecutor. We did look into that, but we couldn't find any proof that she was not a St. Louis City resident. The report details Gardner's resistance to every request made by the Attorney General's office for documents and of discovery. She avoided the production of records, the report says, later adding she never handed over a single page of discovery. What those records say and any further revelations they may contain is currently unknown. Bailey says those records still exist. They're still out there to be assessed. So again, we had that case of where she was going to nursing school, and according to the previous report, she was leaving cases unheard, not showing up to court appearances and things like that, which obviously affects people's lives if you're being prosecuted. Okay, here's our next story. Grand Prairie ISD nurses say that the district is asking them to go against the state. So this one was a little bit shocking to me because I'm like, wait, what? Let's get into it. The first email came on September the 7th from Executive Director of Information Services Bill Young. It states, in part, do not withdraw any student for being out of compliance with vaccines. And so everybody knows when students go back to school, they often have to have their vaccines. That's just the rule, right? So a second email came a day later from the Associate Superintendent, Tracy Davis, that similarly states, we're not unenrolling or excluding students due to immunizations. And so the nurses reported, we feel like our licenses were at stake because we were being asked to do something that's not part of the Texas Code. The Texas Code the nurse is referring to is the Texas Administrative Code, which outlines state law. It says, quote, a student must show acceptable evidence of vaccination prior to entry or at a start of school. That's unless the student has a valid exemption through medicinal or religious reasons, though, or if they're provisionally enrolled. The nurses claim following these rules have never been a problem until this year. A second nurse said the district is not abiding by those laws. They're allowing kids to come in, basically breaking the laws, but they're receiving the funding for the kids who are not in compliance for state law. We asked the nurses why. The nurse said they actually said, when we have an empty seat, that's money we're missing out on. So data CBS News Texas received from the nurses shows that by the second week of school, the Grand Prairie ISD had almost 2,000 kids unvaccinated attending class. That's about 7.5% of the student body. Now, I want to stop here because those of you that may be listening and are not in healthcare, these are your routine childhood vaccinations. And unless there is an exemption, you're expected to have them because, let's say you didn't get vaccinated for the measles, one kid gets the measles, you have all these unvaccinated kids, it will spread like wildfire, right? So the nurses told us not only is it a health hazard to the unvaccinated student, but to the immunocompromised ones as well. The nurses felt uncomfortable letting it slide and even more uncomfortable about the line from the email where the district acknowledged students were, quote, out of compliance. So again, if it all comes down to it, what would happen if something were to, like they have a measles outbreak, they're going to be turning to the nurses and saying, well, you know what the state law said, so why didn't you follow the state law? And the school system can say, oh, we didn't mean that, we shouldn't let them, we shouldn't follow the rules. That's not what we meant. We just, So, they would backtrack really quick. So, she said, but the administrator emailed all the principals and told them not to sign. So what they said, so the nurses felt uncomfortable with them being out of compliance. The nurses believed it was wrong and wanted it in writing. We want something in writing that says, you've been notified, the first nurse said. They say a letter was written by their director and was sent out to the principals of each campus. The letter outlined state law and offered a nurse recommendation of unenrolling vaccinated children. So nurses are like, So then the administration emailed all the principals and told them, don't sign that. So with nothing in ink, the nurses got to signing themselves. Here we are. We need to protect our licenses, the third nurse said. So that's when we filed a safe harbor to protect our licenses. Though the district said it doesn't legally apply to them, it does to the Texas Board of Nursing. A safe harbor is a document that protects nurses from losing their licenses when they find themselves in possible violation of nursing practice. They say almost every nurse in the district signed. The nurses say they felt like they were punished. We asked why. Yes, every day, the first nurse replied, because they give us more work to do and we don't have time to actually do the things that we're supposed to do. Each Friday, the nurses say they were asked to check in with unvaccinated students, update numbers, and report to higher ups. The immunization numbers did go up, but it took months. By October, the district was 98% of the students were vaccinated. She said if they would have just followed the law from the get-go, they would have compliance within 2 weeks, the nurse said. So when CBS News asked them for comment about possibly breaking the law, the district responded, well, herd immunity is reached when 95% of the population is vaccinated. However, CBS News Texas couldn't find anything in law that mentions herd immunity. Even so, according to the nurses' data, if by the second week of school, 7.5% of the students were unvaccinated, only 92.5% were vaccinated, which is still beneath that threshold. The district replied, there is no way to know how many students are vaccinated fully or on a path to compliance on the first day of school because nurses have not yet had the opportunity to review the files of every student to verify immunization status. But the nurses say they began looking at the numbers in April or May. After conflicting information from the district and the nurses, the Grand Prairie ISD provided us with one final statement telling CBS News Texas that they have begun excluding children who are unvaccinated and asking them to stay home until they receive immunizations and can return to school. So, of course, they backtracked because this came to light. And so I applaud these nurses. I'm going to say that they're definitely one of our nurses that made a difference because they held their feet to the fire and said, hey, look, we need to protect our license because you're asking us to do something that is not legal. So congratulations to them for bringing this to the forefront. So let's go across the world because this is an article that happened on the other day, and I wanted to share this because I want you to know that the nursing shortage that we are experiencing is not unique to just the U.S. It's happening all over the world. And this happens to be an article out of Iran International. And it says Iran's nursing shortage causing patient deaths. Iran's dire nursing shortage is now causing fatalities in hospitals as over 3,000 nurses leave the country annually. And this has been a problem. We've talked about this before about wealthier countries, Western nations, inviting nurses from other countries to come and serve to shore up our own shortages. And this is how it affects those places where they have left behind. So Mohammed Sharif, I'm probably going to butcher your name. Sorry, sir. Mahagdam, the Secretary General of the Nursing Association, said patients are dying due to the shortage of nurses. He emphasized the dissatisfaction among nurses, revealing that official statistics indicate over 90% of them are unhappy with their work, raising serious concerns about the quality of patient care. The destinations for migrating nurses are predominantly Germany, the United States, Australia, and Canada. He highlighted the challenges of compensating for the loss of experience and professional nursing staff, making it a daunting task. Sharif Makhadam recently reported a shortage of 70,000 nurses. Iran's leading economic daily, Dahanye newspaper, I am not going to try to say the rest of that, I apologize, in a May report disclosed that over 10,000 doctors and nurses had left Iran in the previous year. Over the past 4 years, the country has witnessed the migration of 16,000 general practitioners. So again, that's an issue that I wanted to bring out. And when I saw that, I wanted to make sure that we keep that into our forefront, that what's happening to those local places when all the nurses leave for perceived greener passages. Okay. It's coming out. Let's go bring it back to the U.S. here. This is coming out from Kentucky. And this is talking about the VA now. So hold on. We just had Veterans Day. Just a reminder. So this is from the Lexington Herald Leader, and it says Kentucky's veteran centers sit half empty while aging veterans wait for a vacant bed. Kentucky's 4 state-run nursing homes for military veterans with 681 beds between them are sitting half empty, while some elderly veterans wait for months to hear if there's any room for them to be admitted. By the time retired Sergeant Major Frank Brantley died October 10th at the age of 81, the 30-year-old Army veteran had spent 12 months waiting to enter the Carl M. Brashear Veterans Center in Radcliffe. He never got the call. There are presently 25 veterans on the facility's wait list. Brantley's family said they kept asking the Veterans Center's admissions office when a bed would be available for him. Nobody ever gave them a direct answer, they said. In May of this year, I asked, is there any way to tell where he is on the list? I mean, is he like number 10? Is he number 52? And that the question was pretty much dodged. His daughter, Stacey Brantley of Vine Grove, testified November 8th to the legislature's interim joint committee on Veterans Military Affairs and Public Protection. She goes on to say it was pretty frustrating to know that he went a whole year and we never knew where he was on that list or if or when he was going to get in. Brantley spent his final year shuttling between assisted living facilities and hospitals. The veteran's grandson, Kyle Brundage, told lawmakers that the quality of care, stability, and companionship he could have found at a veterans center might have given him a better life's end. The Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs spends about $85 million a year to operate veterans centers in Perry, Gethsemane, Hardin, and Hopkins County. They are facilities that are separate from the federal Veterans Health Administration system. Their respective occupancy rates on Friday were 67%, 45%, 48%, and 42%. A 5th state veterans center under construction for about $55 million in Bowling Green is to start admitting veterans by early 2025. It will have 60 beds. Unfortunately, while the state has hundreds of beds to provide long-term care to veterans, it does not have anywhere near enough employees to run them at full capacity. Department of Veterans Affairs officials told the legislative committee at the hearing. In particular, the state has struggled to hire and retain nursing staffs, just like hospitals and nursing homes in the private sector around the country. In an interview with the Herald Leader on Friday, Bowman said the number of nursing staff employed by the 4 veteran centers fell from 369 in 2019 to a low of 176 last year. Its drop fueled in large part by stress from the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, they have the beds available. They don't have the staff. It says that a nurse's aide position in the Hardin County Veterans Center is presently advertised as starting at $42,806 a year, and RN position at the same facility is about $73,403. Now, I just talked to a CNA who just told me that on her agency contract, she was making like $45 an hour. And that's here in Indiana, obviously, but I'm just saying there's a problem. And that's really not a livable wage if you think about it. $42,000 in this economy? Mm-mm. So according to this, lawmakers said they had not realized until their tour how serious the problem had become, because the state budget passed 2 years ago. So the members of the Veterans Committee said November 8th they were surprised this summer when they toured the veteran centers and saw entire wings vacant and closed off, even as families complained of there not being enough bed space to accept alien and elderly veterans. So State Senator Matthew Deneen of Elizabethtown says the facilities are wonderful, but I have some grave concerns when it comes to communicating and the capacity and the occupancy rates. He says we have beds available, yet we still have veterans on waiting lists. We have poor communication with folks that are not reaching back out to those on the list. So we'll keep an eye and see what's happening there. But I just wanted to bring that up, that there are staffing shortages and issues that are going on. Now this was like, this is from the ANA. This is a slap in the face. This was a slap in the face. So I'm going to say, hold on to your hats for this one. New study, U.S. nurses receive only 1 penny of philanthropic donations. Yeah, let's get into it. So today, the American Nurses Foundation released the results of a groundbreaking new study, Philanthropic Support for the Nursing Profession, which examines funding priorities in the nursing profession and the importance of investing in nursing leadership, the impact of diversity in nursing, and the need to ensure nurses properly benefit from healthcare funding. Nurses receive only a penny of every dollar donated to healthcare. Nurses are the largest group of healthcare professionals in the U.S. I'm going to say that again. Nurses are the largest group of healthcare professionals in the U.S. and are vital to the functioning of the healthcare system. Yet between 2015 and 2022, though private donations to healthcare were substantial, totaling $333.3 billion, nurses received only 1% of these contributions. Effective and equitable healthcare advances with investments in nursing. Nurses have vast clinical knowledge and expertise, which positions them as innovators and leaders within the healthcare system. However, only 3 out of every 100 grants for nurses focuses on investing in nurse leadership or nurse-led intervention. The research also is suggesting that the healthcare systems cannot properly provide culturally competent and equitable healthcare without a diverse nursing workforce that adequately reflects the communities they serve. However, this study shows that only about 1% of foundation grant dollars and 1% of the number of grants awarded explicitly reference diversification of the nursing workforce. So, yet again, this is why I say, nurses, we need to come together. This was a hard pill to swallow, and I've certainly seen the effect of this. But as the largest number of healthcare workers, nurses, we should have a little bit more power and stake in this. We really should. Okay. Here's another article about nurse practitioners. This is from Healthcare Finance News. And it says nurse practitioner workforce grows 8.5%. There were about 355,000 practicing NPs nationally in 2022, but this year the number grew to 385,000. According to the American Association of Nurse Practitioners, they released the numbers during National Nurse Practitioner Week, which is this week, happening National Nurse Practitioner Week, everyone. It says in every state, NPs assess patients, order, interpret tests, etc., make diagnosis, including prescribing medications. They're found in clinics, hospitals, emergency rooms, urgent care, etc. AANP said that as clinicians who blend clinical expertise with an added emphasis on health management, an NP brings a comprehensive perspective to healthcare and are the provider of choice for millions of patients in more than 1 billion health visits each year. The U.S. News and World Report ranked the NP role first on its 223 best jobs that help people's list, and also first on the 2023 best healthcare jobs list. Additionally, elected leaders, including U.S. governors, are honoring NPs and proclaiming November 12th through the 18th as NP Week in their states, districts, and jurisdictions. So I want to say that, yes, we are making strides and there are more nurse practitioners coming out there. And I think that's wonderful. And I certainly am glad that they are honoring nurse practitioners during Nurse Practitioner Week. Okay. And this is our last big story before we get our nurse making a difference. This is coming out of North Carolina. It says State Attorney General, doctors, and nurses criticize HCA over patient care at North Carolina's Mission Hospital. But this was a disturbing story to get into it. Let's get into this. It says 4 years after it bought Mission Hospital, an 815-bed facility in Asheville, North Carolina, HCA Healthcare is under fire in the region, threatened with a lawsuit by the state attorney general and facing criticism from nurses and at least 124 current and former Mission doctors who say HCA, the nation's largest for-profit hospital chain, is imperiling patient care at the facility in its pursuit of profits. Profits over people is not an ethic, model, or aspiration that can deliver the quality of care we all expect and deserve, the doctors wrote in a letter to the independent monitoring watch over management of the hospital. We ask that the hospital leadership look at economics as if people mattered. On October the 31st, the Office of North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein wrote a letter to a foundation called Dogwood Health Trust, contending that HCA had violated the terms of the agreement it struck in 2019 when it bought Mission, a formerly nonprofit facility. Under that agreement, HCA had promised to continue providing an array of specific services for a decade at the hospital, including those involving behavioral health care. That's one of the first ones they usually cut. Emergency and trauma, oncology, and pediatrics. Dogwood Health Trust was created when HCA bought Mission and works to improve the health of people in Western North Carolina. The Attorney General's office noted a breach of that agreement at Mission, citing diminished care in the hospital's oncology unit and its emergency department. The letter warned that if HCA did not cure the violations within 40 days, Stein is authorized to file suit. A Mission spokeswoman said in a statement that the hospital is proud of the health care it provides and is disappointed by the Attorney General's statement. She says, we continue to meet and often exceed the obligations under the asset purchase agreement. The independent monitor has confirmed compliance every year since the agreement has been signed in 2019. The spokeswoman also provided a letter signed by 75 Mission practitioners who say patients continue to receive great care at the facility. Well, I'm kind of like, what are they going to say? They work for you. But anyway, let's go on. So Dr. Martin Palmer, an oncologist who practiced at Mission before HCA took over and has continued to practice there, has a different view. Before the HCA buyout, he said in an interview with NBC News, local oncologists had developed excellent clinical programs to treat patients in the region. But after HCA acquired Mission, he said nursing staff declined precipitously. The number of chemotherapy trained pharmacists went from 4 to 1, and the HCA labs and turnaround times declined significantly. These deficiencies made it difficult to treat the full array of cancer patients coming to the hospital. After years of trying unsuccessfully to resolve these problems, Palmer said the only choice he and his colleagues had was to stop offering 3 oncology services at which he said Mission had previously excelled. There were treatments for acute myelogenous leukemia, acute lymphatic leukemia, and primary central nervous system lymphoma. We felt it would be best for our patients to get their complex hematology care elsewhere. HCA declined to address Palmer's criticisms, but a spokesperson provided letters the company sent to North Carolina officials disputing the criticisms of its oncology services. They called this criticism unfounded, and the HCA's takeover Mission has resulted in, quote, enhanced oncology services. Moreover, the nurse-to-patient ratio in oncology are, quote, flexible and adaptable to patient needs and consistent with the best practices at HCA's Cancer Institute. Regarding understaffing of chemo-trained pharmacists, HCA told state officials in the letters that it's, quote, continuing to pursue opportunities to enhance its pharmacy coverage and offerings. As for the lab, they say mission is enhancing lab technician training to permit technician staffing that better targets the volume needs on a day-to-day basis, which will further reduce processing times. Emergency department is another problem, according to doctors, nurses, and patients. Brian Robinson, a psychotherapist and professor emeritus at the University of North Carolina, said he has experienced the deficiency firsthand. In 2019, before HCA took over the hospital, Robinson told NBC News he visited Mission's emergency department with chest pain. He did not have to wait, quickly received a stent, and departed. In late September, when he returned to Mission's emergency department for a low heart rate, he had a vastly different experience. After waiting for 6 hours, he said, who's 78, by the way, he was called to a partitioned area where his diagnosis was discussed. It was neither private nor soundproof, he said, adding that he could hear about other patients' conditions as he felt sure they heard about his. He feels that the hospital violated his privacy rights under the HIPAA law. He complained to Mission, but did not get a response. He goes on to say, the worst part of all of this is the doctors and nurses are phenomenal. This is not about them. It's about this facility that has been turned into Kentucky Fried Hospital. Mission spokesperson declined to answer that, nor did the hospital CEO say anything. HCA Healthcare operates about 180 hospitals in the U.S. and generates billions in earnings. NBC News has reported extensively on HCA this year, examining company practices that more than 60 doctors and nurses say put profits ahead of patients. Among those reports was one in January on understaffing at HCA facilities, considering a Mission hospital. Developments in the HCA Mission dispute have been covered closely by Asheville Watchdog, a free local and nonprofit news organization. So it says on November 1st, EMS in nearby McDowell County, North Carolina, stopped transferring non-emergent patients to Mission Hospital, citing hours-long wait times for paramedics who must continue caring for their patients until they are admitted. So Will Keller, who is the Emergency Services Director for McDowell County, says, our agency has worked with HCA for more than a year now to address and improve the extended wait times at Mission Hospital. Unfortunately, we're making no progress, and the situation is getting worse. Paramedics waiting 1 to 2 hours in the ER for a bed and a nurse to assume care is a situation that should never be deemed acceptable. And of course, Mission did not have a response for that. 124 doctors who signed the letter criticizing HCA management of Mission included 9 former chiefs of staff at the hospital, 6 former Mission board members, and 66 actively practicing physicians, including 17 who signed themselves as anonymous, according to a former Mission doctor. Several current and former Mission doctors who spoke with NBC News did so on the condition of anonymity because they fear retaliation by HCA. Noting that more than 200 doctors have left the hospital since HCA took over, the letter said, stifling the ability to speak freely undercuts the communication necessary for shared trust, continued improvement, and a greater good. Okay, there's a lot more to this story, but let's get on. So it says 2 longtime Mission nurses spoke with NBC News for the article. Kelly Coward, a cardiac ICU nurse, and Mark Klein, a vascular access nurse. After HCA acquired Mission, its nursing staff voted to unionize. Both Coward and Klein worked at Mission before the HCA takeover and still work there, and they discussed the differences. Most center on understaffing that threatens patients at the facility, they said. For example, each ICU nurse now often cares for 3 patients, they say, not 1 or 2, as is safe. And charge nurses now have patients they must care for, which was not the case previously. Until unit secretaries are gone, both nurses said, so there's no one to answer the phones, and the number of nursing assistants has dwindled. As a result, nurses must pick up those duties. In the emergency department, Klein said, the triage area was never a treatment area. Now it is. The the diminishment is across the board. HCA may be continuing services, but they're not continuing them at the same level. Coward describes two important services for cardiac patients that vanished under HCA. One, called HeartPath, was an educational program that helped new heart patients understand their diagnoses. The team of nurses told them what to expect, she said, made sure they had their follow-up appointments and all the tools they needed to be successful with their new diagnosis. Under another program that disappeared under HCA, a nurse would follow patients recently diagnosed with heart disease to the hospital discharge and subsequent appointments with physicians. These people are going to slip through the cracks. Let's go on. Okay. Of course, Mission then declined to address the nurses' criticisms. So let's go on. So scrutiny on HCA stewardship of Mission coincides with a growing call from some physician groups to ban corporations practicing medicine, which they say imperils both patients and doctors. Over 30 states in the nation have laws barring corporations from practicing medicine to prevent healthcare from being tainted by commercial influences and the drive for profits. California, for example, prohibits corporations or other non-licensed people or entities from practicing medicine, assisting in the unlicensed practice of medicine, employing physicians, or owning physician practices. But few states enforce these laws, and corporate ownership of physician practices and other healthcare entities has grown significantly in recent years. According to Dr. Mitchell Lee, a practicing emergency physician and founder of Take Medicine Back, profit-oriented corporations are exerting control over physicians and the practice of medicine throughout the country. But there are a few places where this is more pronounced in the Western North Carolina, where HCA took over Mission. The company has joined forces with Wall Street private equity firms. Ding, 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 ding. Again, I want to say that this is what's happening in long-term care, now hospitals as well. Private equity firms that employ physicians to extract wealth from the community, and those physicians can be, quote, removed from the schedule on a whim without justification. If they cross HCA administration, they have few alternative opportunities for work, because remember, we previously discussed the non-compete clause. Of course, Mission did not respond to comment on Dr. Lee's statement as well. So in Florida, where HCA operates 46 hospitals, 2 state lawmakers have drafted a bill to be submitted in January that would bar entities other than physician groups, nonprofit hospitals, and medical schools from employing, controlling, or interfering with a physician's clinical judgment. So we'll see how that comes out. Hopefully it will all get taken care of. We'll see what happens. All right, so we want to talk about our nurse making a difference, but this will be our last story for tonight. I told you it was a heavy, heavy news day. But we want to congratulate Alabama State and Director, Nurse Practitioner Dr. Joyce Lloyd Davis, who will be inducted into the Alabama Nursing Hall of Fame on Thursday, November the 9th. And she was inducted this past Thursday. Lloyd Davis is among 8 nurses selected for this honor. She credits the love and support of her family as the catalyst for success. The Millbrook native has been working in the field of nursing for more than 27 years and led the ASU ComUniversity charge of administering vaccines to the students, companies, families, and others during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I say congratulations to her for making the Nurse of the Year in the Hall of Fame, I should say. Alabama's Nursing Hall of Fame. So that's our nurse making a difference. Thank you for tuning in. I know there was a lot today, and we went a little bit over on our stories, but again, there was just a lot to cover today. So I want to thank you again. If you have any community events that are coming up, let me know. I'll be happy to shout them out. I will also say that we do have our TB certification class coming up on November the 29th. I want to wish everybody a safe and happy Thanksgiving. We will be having our show on Wednesday. It will probably be an abbreviated show to get ready for the holiday. But I do encourage everybody to continue to tune in every week. Don't forget to like and share our content, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified every time that we go live every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. And then also don't forget our other show, the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where we interview nurse business owners and leaders. And we have a great new episode coming up. Our most recent episode included Pat Iyer. With those of you that are legal nurse consultants will recognize that name. She's one of the founders in our profession. She's been a wonderful trainer and coach and mentor to me. So please, I encourage you to check out that podcast link. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.